Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling review show with myself and Mike after another 4-0 win, this time in Europe. Last time it was Forest before the Villa draw. Before we get into the breakdown of the match and where we can then progress in the competition, I thought it's quite notable for us to say about the news today about Jacqueline Gold passing away. And yeah, obviously the thoughts go out to their family and stuff as well, because it's obviously devastating news for them at this time. So yeah, getting into the review. 4-0 win, comfortable on the night, as we kind of predicted in our preview. I was tempted to go 4-0, but you kind of brought me back down to reality, and we went with 2-0 in the end, so I'm a bit gutted about that. But before we kind of get into the main kind of crop of the match, here's the look at the lineups and how we went about our business from the start. As you can see, Ariel in goal. Cresswell came back in with Johnson as well, right back. I was surprised Zuma started as well, considering it was his third game in 7 days, but he managed to go through pretty much most of the game unhinged, and he partnered Ogbonna at the back. Then we had a midfield three at the start of Souček, Paqueta, and Fornals, and it was quite interesting to see Souček playing as more of the defensive midfielder. And you had Lanzini and Bowen either side, with Scamacca up top. So, Mike, when this team was kind of announced, I don't think many people would have expected, say, Lanzini to be on the left and Fornals to be in the middle. What did you make of that at the start, and kind of Moyes' intentions to give players natural positions and the ability to play? Obviously not Lanzini, but Fornals here.
Yeah, well, I think when we talk about Lanzini, we've got to remember in his early years at West Ham, he either played on the right wing or he played on the left, kind of when, Payet went, and obviously like I said, centre attacking midfield. But I think with Lanzini, he's a pretty flexible player, can pretty much play anywhere in that midfield, really. So I wasn't necessarily surprised by the layout. I kind of thought maybe Fornals would play on the left, but I thought what happened in the game was both Fornals and Lanzini seemed to naturally swap positions quite a lot. I even said during the game that it's nice to see that there's some freedom been afforded to them. I think that really helped because they marshaled their own positions, but they also had that understanding to kind of move around. One of the things I felt, one of the weirdest things was essentially watching Souček play that Rice role. Times dropping into the back four or back three as it was sometimes. Yeah. Dropping in on that left hand side was a bit odd because obviously you're so used to watching Rice do that. But I think he was effective in that game. He just had to do the simple things. It was very limited performance, but an effective one. And I think that's where he flourishes when he's given some very kind of, more limited kind of pieces. And it was kind of led more to the likes of Lanzini, Fornals and Paqueta to kind of drive us forward and kind of control the game. But I thought it was a decent lineup. We pretty much said that was the lineup we would have gone for. I think the only real difference was I think we said Kehrer over Zuma because obviously again just not wanting to overplay players. So in terms of lineup, I think it was pretty much expected. Maybe not the layout of formations, but I think when you look at formations really under other managers, they are really just a way in which to put players onto a pitch. They don't necessarily mean that is the direct kind of formation you play.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can look at the kind of average position that most players took up in the match. Obviously, we're attacking downwards in this picture. Quite interesting to see, and I did notice it in the first half. Scamacca was coming over to this left-hand side just naturally because we had Lanzini and, like you mentioned, Fornals interlinking on that side, and Bowen was more of the kind of pushing them back on kind of the wider areas. And you can see there, Bowen was actually our furthest forward player, and that kind of, I thought this is kind of nice because it kind of encapsulates what Scamacca is about and what Scamacca does well, playing to his strengths. And, many people will talk about what Antonio does, maybe trying to get in behind and trying to use a bit of his pace to stretch defenses. Scamacca is a completely different type of player. He will like to drop deeper. He will like to link with the likes of Lanzini, Fornals, Bowen, Paqueta. And I thought he did that pretty well in periods of the game. And yeah, I think this graphic kind of shows that he was trying to come deeper. He was trying to interlink play, and he wasn't really necessarily trying to get in behind too much because that just isn't his game. And what did you kind of make of the early pressure we had on and control? Because we mentioned it in our preview, we want to see a controlled performance. And for the first 15, 20 minutes before we scored the first goal, I thought it was a very controlled performance.
Yeah, I think what we did well throughout the whole entire game was we really did control pretty much everything. And, you making reference to him putting on to the left-hand side, he did come out to the left quite a bit. Bowman's obviously quite high on the right. And it's something we've said constantly, that if you're allowing him to kind of roam a bit and you're willing to get players ahead, it can certainly be something that becomes advantageous to you for a club. And, there was a really good early chance with him just by going on that left-hand side. He kind of picks up the ball on the left. So, first off, I think the ball is won by Lanzini, like deep in our half. Fornals picks the ball up, drives forward with it before laying it into Scamacca. Obviously, their defence is just backing off because they're not expecting anything. And the good thing is, again, we've got players going forward. We had both Fornals and Bowen willing to get into the area. We had, obviously, Paqueta and Johnson were pushing up as well to get involved. What Scamacca did well is he also slowed down that pace, allowed those guys to get up alongside, and it also gave him time to assess as to what he wanted to do. Again, he had an option to deliver in the box. We know he's got quality to deliver. And we also know he's got an absolute thunderous shot. And when he hits it clean. And, this was in the first 6 minutes of play, and he's absolutely fizzed one just wide and over. But it was a brilliant shot. And just, again, the audacity to hit it from that angle and I'm going to try and put this in the top corner. And to nearly do that was fantastic. And there was another period as well where a bit later in the half, obviously, but again, he's dropping deep, picking up the ball. Look where Bowen is. Look where Fornals is. There's a lot of space on that side where Fornals is on the left. Again, we don't necessarily have strikers that at this point would probably be pinging that ball into a channel where, a player like Fornals could be run onto, or even Bowen. And, this again resulted in a really good opportunity. Fornals unlucky, he absolutely crashes the crossbar. But, it was kind of things like that he was doing. He was dropping deep to receive the ball and players in. Now, there was obviously some rustiness in his play. We're not going to dress it up as it was a virtuoso performance, but, he did what he did and what he had to do. He did well. There were times where his touch was a little bit loose under pressure, and some of it, his passing tried to force it a bit. But ultimately, he played well in the first 16 seconds of the game. He's chasing down, and all he's doing, you can see him throwing his arm up and waving players to come up with him. So this is something that I think sometimes not talked about when they say, Scamacca needs to do more. No, a player can chase, but again, if you running around on your own, pressing 2 or 3 players is a thankless task. And if you haven't got the pace of others, people then go, he's lazy. It's like, no, at that point, you're going to be economical with your efforts, because if your teammates are not backing you up, why are you going to keep chasing and running yourself into the ground?
I mean, we saw it against Aston Villa. Danny Ings. I mean, we were very reluctant to set off in that press. We were very much giving the centre backs and their goalkeeper Martinez a lot of time on the ball, just to pretty much just saying, okay, pass through us if you can, because we're not going to come out and press. And I thought Ings did that a lot throughout that match. He wasn't just not willingly running around just trying to press for the sake of pressing, because 2 passes and they'll be through your midfield. So I understand what you're saying with Scamacca. He will be conservative with his press, but he needs that cohesive press, because I think we're pretty poor at that. To be honest, when the strike, especially Antonio, the Antonio of last year and the year before, was really good at setting off the press. This year, it's been less so. And when Antonio has gone in, it's been very easy for teams to just play 1 or 2 passes through that. And the space between our defence, midfield and forward line is huge. And I think that's the biggest problem we've had, because we just don't trust ourselves to squeeze up. So what we do is we leave such a big gap between our back 4 and that midfield. So then when we try and go press, it's so easy. There's so much space for teams to play through us. So I think that will come with personnel, with maybe an adaptation to the system. And I think Scamacca will benefit from that, because he'll have players much closer to him. He'll have players willingly, running in behind when he does get the ball, when we're in possession. And also when we're setting off the press, he can be that person that's kind of there, and he's got the support of his midfielders behind.
Yeah, and I think we saw Scamacca he put in the effort. He was chasing things down. He was looking to press. When we got the ball, he was looking to get in the box. He looked like he was playing with urgency. It was though he'd taken words to heart, and took it to heart in the right way. He didn't kind of sulk. He actually made a point. You could tell he was a player that wasn't quite fit. And I think that will come. We mentioned about, obviously, our press has been so awkward, but against Larnaca, obviously is admirable. They wanted to play out from the back all the time,
Yeah.
but it did allow us to constantly get turnover of possession. This is just one example of many examples during the game where, we were in positions where we were constantly able to force them to play it long, even if it's along the floor, but still longer passes, which probably had a lower percentage of getting to one of their players because we had our players pushed up in advanced positions. How many times this season have we seen our left winger and our right winger up that high as we're looking to press? Obviously, this is them circulating the ball around the back, but still, we've got our centre forward pressing the player in the possession. We've got Fornals in a position where he can cut out a pass back to his centre back partner or even pressure the goalkeeper. So, these are the things that we need to do more often, because the more you do those kind of actions, the more of a habit it becomes, the easier it is, the more kind of comfortable you are that wherever he's going, I now need to go.
Yeah.
And again, you force teams to be a bit more hurried with possession. Now, obviously, the quality of Larnaca is a lot lower than the teams that we play in the Premier League. There's no two ways about that. But it's creating good habits. And if you create good habits, then you can bring that into the league. And one of the things that we've always said is that we don't press enough. So to actually go and do that and to get possession really meant that we were able to constantly put pressure on Larnaca.
Speaking of good habits, scoring goals. And that is what we need Scamacca to be getting into a good habit of. And, he did that after 20 minutes. Again, it was kind of a fumble-ish goal, but he got into the position himself. Maybe a little bit luckily with a loose touch, but, they started to play, as we can kind of see here. Picking up the ball after they kind of lose the ball in midfield. Fornals was onto it, plays the pass to Lanzini, and, Scamacca's instantly at this point aware of what's going to happen. And then we kind of move on to here. Lanzini progresses with the ball really nicely. Again, so much space to run into. I think Larnaca were kind of victims of that throughout the first half. They were just trying to play in areas that they couldn't play in. And, with the London Stadium, we mentioned it in our preview, being so much bigger compared to what they used to, they just didn't have the legs for it. They didn't have the players around, and they were trying to be a bit more adventurous, but it kind of just killed them before the match had even started. And, Lanzini, who I thought was excellent last night, very intelligently understood that and, obviously occupied the space really well. Scamacca drifting out to that left-hand side, picking up the ball. And as we mentioned, it was composure. It's easy to kind of fluff a chance like that. I don't know how many West Ham fans would have been maybe confident if this was Antonio in this situation to kind of cut inside and shoot. But, Scamacca, to his credit, keeps hold of the ball very well, steps inside his man and gets off a shot that, again, the goalie probably should be saving, but it was a nice strike-ish. And, it's more about the confidence of that goal and kind of just settling the tie as well. Any nerves that were in the stadium, if there were any. And he's got his goal. It sends a message to Moyes. It sends a message to the fans watching, and hopefully it gives him a bit more confidence. And I think after that game, you could see he was playing with a lot more confidence as well, because he was a bit rusty in the first 10, 15 minutes, but I thought he grew into the game after that goal, and that kind of set him in tone for the rest of the game. Yeah,
exactly. Like we made the comment about the switch he put in behind. He's that kind of player that flourishes when you have players looking to get on ahead of him. It's something we've mentioned all season. Even before he signed, or as he signed, we said you get players doing that, then you'll get the best out of him, and we haven't seen it. So how you can get the best out of a player when you don't even play to their strengths or even acknowledge their strengths is mind-boggling. But you say he grew in, even when he toe punts, he still manages to toe punt with power. And he was really unlucky with not getting a second goal. Again, we got the ball. So I think we picked the ball up again. Lanzini again playing into Paqueta, so much space to run into.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably part of the problem, because there was so much space to run into. He kind of delayed when to make the pass. He essentially drove forward quite a bit before then he makes it. And obviously he was just offside. But again, the placement of the pass was quality. Scamacca's placement himself as well, to put himself between the defender and the fullback and to make that space so the ball can be played into him, so he can then just control and set it onto his stronger foot was so good. And then, unfortunately, it's a brilliant finish, absolutely in the bottom corner. Keeper had no chance. But lo and behold, it was off. So it's a shame. It would have been great for him to have got a second there, but I think it would do him confidence as well to know that players are now starting to find him or trying to find him and looking for him. And that's the thing, we've asked for players to get in behind the back line. That is him getting in behind the line. He's positioned himself intelligently. He's made himself available for the pass. And when he gets it, he's absolutely clinical. How many times have we seen Antonio been in that position? And God knows what happens. But it certainly
can't predict what's going to happen next.
It isn't always a finish. It goes down to like West Ham clips,
Yeah.
What happens next? It's just one of those situations. But it was a quality finish. It's just a shame he was just marginally offside. But I think, had that gone in, it really could have been a romp by that side. I think their heads would have really have gone. But it was the right decision. It was a correct call. We can't grumble. But you have to take the encouraging pieces out of it. Someone may say, well, he should have held his run. Yeah, probably should have. But also, he's anticipating the pass.
Yeah.
And he's got himself in position and then finished. So there are more positives than I would ever say there's a negative in that situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In that kind of situation, it is marginal with the run. And the main thing was he was making the run and he finished it really nicely. So it was very comfortable up until that point. It kind of looked like we were going to get the next goal and, just really just cement the tie. But actually, they did get a goal back. And, through the joys of VAR, we were saved. And, if we get it up here, we do play a very high line in comparison to what we're probably used to West Ham playing. And yeah, you can kind of see here what happens. The ball's kind of played through. And to be fair, it was a nice finish from them in the kind of instance for this goal. But what did you make of this high line, and how this chance kind of came about? Were you happy when you were watching this that we'd kind of stepped up, or were you kind of like, why is there so much space in between our goalkeeper and our defence in this kind of area of the pitch?
I just looked at it as a bit of a calamity of errors. Obviously, because Zuma is sitting in the position where Souček should be. Souček has dropped into the back line, so he's doing the right thing, but he's positioned incorrectly. He's too close to Johnson. He should be actually where the centre forward is, or really pretty much where Zuma is in terms of the line. Because if he's in that position, that pass never gets played, and then end up playing it into the wing. So it's just awareness, Souček's not aware what's on his shoulder. Got to credit the striker. He does the right thing. He basically can see the number of the defender. Once you do that, you're in control as a striker. Bonner probably should have been more aware. Didn't particularly impress me in that situation because, again, he's not switched on to the potential problem. He may say, I knew he was offside, but that's gambling because both Cresswell and Johnson are essentially behind him. So you're taking a big risk if that's what he felt. So I just thought it was a bit of a calamity of errors. Zuma's completely out of position. If you're going to come out that far, you need to win. But then also, if someone's dropping into your place, they've got to give a bit of a gap between the fullback and the centre-back, and he didn't. And yeah, I think we were a bit lucky. Had Larnaca scored, it probably wouldn't have been unfair on us to have conceded because they were actually playing some nice football at times and having some good interchanges. So, we wasn't completely one-way traffic. We were in control, but there was a nice ebb and flow to it. They were coming forward, weren't really threatening, but it's it's one of those moments where you go, should have done better, should have been better organised as a defence. It's probably the one time in the game where we were in any kind of way out of shape, and they almost made us pay for it. Fortunately, he went just a fraction too early, much like with the Scamacca one. So it kind of saved our blushes, I think, in some ways.
And one thing that kind of killed off the game in any sense was the red card that shortly followed. And there was a lot of kind of debate whether it was a red, whether it wasn't. And, you could even see Fornals himself kind of pleading to the ref saying, no, it's a yellow, like you don't need to send him off. Probably just a nice good gesture from him because he didn't feel it was necessarily a red card on himself. And, it kind of he knew what was going to happen if they got a red card. It was just going to completely kill off the game. And that's kind of what it did. And yeah, so you can kind of see here, even Fornals is like, why? Why is it a red card? He kind of couldn't believe it was shown. And I think to the credit of VAR and the ref, you can kind of see here, it is high. It does look worse in slow motion, but you can kind of see how high his leg did come up. the actual challenge itself, in terms of the intent of it, it wasn't malicious at all, in my opinion. I don't think there was any intent there. He was just kind of trying to stop play and try and break it up. But when you go in with your foot that high, you're always going to run the risk when you've got VAR slowing things down, looking at every little angle. And I think there's no kind of case here where you can get away with that just because of how high it is and the position it is on Fornals' leg.
Yeah, I think, the thing why Fornals was probably being a bit, look, ref, it's an accident. He didn't mean it. It's just a late challenge. I think if Joe Cole kind of summed it up, it was a tackle that you'd seen years go by. Had he gone in at pace, I think we might be having a completely separate conversation as to, is it red?
Yeah.
But I think by the letter of the law, the play's gone. It's essentially a tackle from behind at this point. He's gone studs up into his calf, not even his ankle. It's into his calf. The ball's gone. He's nowhere near. It was just lazy, lethargic tackle. Just try to stop play. There was no intent.
Yeah.
But again, just because there's not intent, just because he didn't go in at pace doesn't mean that it wasn't a dangerous tackle. So I think VAR got it right. The ref got it right. When I saw it at first, it's an innocuous challenge. You didn't really think of it because in actual play, it didn't seem like much. It just looked like he got clipped on the ankle or just caught on the ankle. But then when you saw the actual replay and you saw how high his foot was and the fact that his studs were out, you then go, well, actually, I've got no sympathy because it was just a silly challenge. And, he left his teammates in it right before the end of the first half. And he absolutely killed it for him at that point. They had no chance from there on out. I know it sounds horrible to say that, but they were literally dead and buried at that point.
Yeah, I mean, at that point of the match as well, 3-0 down in aggregate, they're kind of just playing for themselves at this point. And then that happens. I can tell they were probably devastated and it kind of just deflated them. And second half, what I wanted to see was ruthlessness. I wanted to see a killer instinct and I wanted to see us put a game to bed in kind of that fashion. That's exactly what we did within the first 5 minutes of the second half. We obviously got the first goal from Bowen, which was the deflected shot from Scamacca. Again, Scamacca did really well in the box to kind of make that movement. A good save from the goalie.
There's a great cross in from Bowen, which just eluded Scamacca literally by an inch or two. And then obviously we managed to recycle it to get the shot on goal. But again, that composure from Scamacca, I think it's something that's not actually been talked about. It's been like, great following up play by Bowen. Bowen rightly getting a lot of plaudits, but the ability just to take the ball, to roll it out of his foot and then curl it, it's what it is. I do find this kind of funny. We're happy beating these nobodies. I'm not interested in no Village Cup. I want to stay in the Premier League. Simple fact of the matter is, you want to stay in the Premier League, great, we all do. But we also want to taste the silverware. You can call it a Farmers Cup, a Village Cup, whatever you want. But that Village Cup, if we win it, puts us in the Europa League. Us staying in the Premier League is not going to put us there. So, in all honesty, I would rather stay in the Premier League, win a Village Cup and be in the second highest European competition and keep the likes of Paqueta, Scamacca, and go out for players of that calibre rather than just about scrape through. Those players don't want to play for us because we're not in European competition. We have to sell them. And then we have to go for the likes of, just the players who have been from relegated teams that are not that good, looking at championship teams. I'd much rather go through this route, win a Village Cup and have a silverware because to be quite frank, there are a lot of clubs who would like to have the Village Cup. And I'm pretty sure Roma last season and Jose Mourinho, who is a born winner, didn't turn around and call it a Village Cup. It's absolutely disrespectful to competition, of the teams involved, and of your own team. It's just disrespectful.
I don't understand the kind of approach to that because it's just because. So, for example, if Villarreal was still in it, if we had drawn Villarreal today in the quarterfinals, and then in the next round we had, say, a Lazio or a Nice, like people wouldn't be calling it this cup. There's still some very good teams in it. Like it's just because we've had maybe favourable group and a favourable draw doesn't make it any less of a European trophy at the end of the day. And like you mentioned, the prize is Europa League football. You have to finish in the top 6 of the Premier League to get that. So,
in Claude, no, I don't think they want to play in the Championship whilst playing in Europa League. But the simple fact of the matter is, we have a genuine chance at a trophy, and to kick that off just because we're scared of the Premier League safety,
We should stay up regardless of our. We should stay up regardless.
But also, apparently, we have a manager good enough to keep us in the Premier League. If he's good enough to win us a cup, he's good enough to keep us in the Premier League. And the fact of the matter is, we have to do it. And you can say as much as you like and be as derogatory as you want. Say it's the lowest grade of competition in Europe. That's fine. That's your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. But the simple truth of the matter is, it's a European competition that gets into Europa League.
And also, like before this competition existed, the Europa League was the lowest grade in Europe. So it's like it's still a competition. It's just because it's like a new thing. I get people's opinions of it because it's just the one below Europe, and people already kind of looked at Europa League as the step below Champions League. But for clubs like West Ham, this is probably the best chance, bar the Europa League, that we're going to get at seeing a European trophy. Like we're not going
to win an FA Cup. We're not going to win a Carabao Cup. We've tried for years and years and years.
I wonder whether people would rather win like the League Cup or this Europa Conference League, because I would rather win the Conference League. Like,
I think some people would rather win the League Cup because people have a dismissive and a derogatory view against the competition because it's new. It has no real history. It's easy to write off and say, well, it's just like. People weren't complaining when we got the Intertoto Cup and got in, were they? Same difference. Exactly. So it's just a new competition and it's easy to deride. But
let's move on anyway. Let's stay on track with the analysis. And we did go 2-0 up. Bowen, nice rebound from Scamacca's nice play originally, and then literally 2 minutes later, Bowen with an absolutely outstanding finish again, starting the move, coming in from the right hand side, and kind of finished it off. So, Mike, do you want to kind of just run us through it and tell us what happened?
Yeah, there's a nice bit of interplay. Bowen picks up in the middle. In fact, this actually won, I think, the goal of this round, I think, in the Europa Conference, that is. But gets the ball, he drives in midfield, passes it to Cresswell. But what he is good at and what he sees is obviously the space, because he knows that the player currently in the right back position can't hold that role. He's not going to follow Bowen. He has to come out and kind of be close to Cresswell to try and put some pressure. And, in fairness to Larnaca players, they don't kind of switch off. They don't stop. They do kind of follow. But, based on the proximity as well, and also with Cresswell with an accurate cross, that was something that surprised me at the time. It did make me chuckle to myself. But Bowen could only do one thing with this because it was hit with quite a bit of pace and the proximity. He just had to try and flick it. But he managed to control it really well. And obviously the goalkeeper had absolutely no chance. It was a really good header. There's no two ways about it. It was an absolutely brilliant piece of movement from him to kind of follow up. And then the flick in itself, you can't, there's no real other superlative for what happened. And it was a fantastic finish.
Yeah.
I'm great control from him to get that.
Yeah, I'm really happy Bowen got that brace as well, because I think some of the criticism he's got has been merited, to be fair. He hasn't been performing and he hasn't been scoring enough that he should be, but I think he's been getting into enough areas to kind of convert them. And it was nice to see him convert a couple of, very tough finishes yesterday, especially that second one, like you mentioned, that instinct. And he has got that instinct for scoring goals, but he just needs to now transfer it into the Premier League. And hopefully, again, players like Scamacca scoring in this competition, players like Bowen getting a brace, give him that platform and confidence going into the latter stages of the Premier League, which we all know is much more valuable than this competition. We're not saying it isn't. Staying in the Premier League is huge financially, and just for the club itself, it should be the priority. But this competition is here to be won for West Ham. We are favourites of this competition. It's not like, I feel like if we were maybe mid-table or pushing towards Europe again, and we were at this stage as well, people would be saying this is like a really good opportunity here to win European silverware. They wouldn't be kind of dismissing it as something that it isn't. But yeah, let's stay on track with the analysis before we digress again. And
I think the thing to say to that as well is that if we want to be a big club, you need to be in certain competitions. So being in any kind of European competition is where we need to be year on year.
Yeah.
If we're potentially looking to change your manager, being in Europe, any European competition means we're going to get a better quality of manager. The other thing is, again, being in Europe means you have a better quality of player you can go for, unless you're then wanting to overspend on wages. So any European competition means you get a better standard of player. You just go up the runs depending on which competition you're in.
Yeah.
We win this and we're in Europa League. Obviously, hopefully we stay in the Premier League. I believe we should. But again, we still have to fight for that. We can't assume we can. But it will mean we'll have a better class of player that we can go for next year. So it's easy to be dismissive of it, but it doesn't actually look at the long term. It's just going, well, look where we are now. And yes, we do have big term aspirations. We've got to think being in the next level of European competition means we can get a better class of manager. It means we can get a better class of players.
Yeah.
Not being in those competitions means we're probably going to have to overpay in which to entice those players. And that's them. We're then trying to buy loyalty and buy a player in who's not necessarily sold on the idea of playing for a club not in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point to kind of lead us on to the next one, because a player that we didn't have to go out and buy and came through the youth system was Mubama. And he came on, got his appearance in Europe again, and, his home debut off the bench, and he managed to get a goal. And it was just such a great moment for him to be able to get that goal after, he was very close to getting one before, and it kind of got taken off of him as an own goal. And yeah, it's nice that he's got his actual goal this time. He said it in his interview, like, they can't take this one off me. And he seems to have a very good character about him. And, his attitude is excellent, as you could see. The first moment he came onto the pitch, he was pressing, he was running around, he showed a real intent. And I think it was nice for him to get his first goal for the club, because this would have meant a lot to him. And again, it gives Moyes maybe something like, showing Moyes, again, like, I'm here if you need me. And there is a player there, there is a striker there. So take us through the goal, Mike. It was a delicate finish, and it came from a pretty well worked corner.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably I think it's the first corner we've scored all season. Considering how good we were last year, to only just be scoring a goal in March from a corner, it's pretty ridiculous. But what you got to like about this, obviously, we've pretty much put everyone on the edge of the area, apart from Mubama, who's essentially standing on the goalkeeper. We've got one of the defenders occupied. And obviously you can see Souček here right at the back post, right at the very back of the kind of the chain, or the kind of train that we're kind of running. But obviously when we kind of deliver the ball, what was quite smart is the fact, I believe it's Cornet and Zuma essentially act as blockers. So they kind of hold the defenders and kind of stop them from getting out to that. Because this is obviously a worked routine in which to hit the back post and then to try and kind of force it back. And you have to credit Souček, because he just leaps like an absolute salmon for this, and then heads it a back goal. But again, you got to credit Mubama, who's standing on the centre back. Then as soon as that ball comes over, he's already moving. He doesn't stand still. That's the thing I like about him. He's never still. He's always looking to find some sort of space. He's a bit of a poacher, but at the same time, he is a type of player that will press effectively. He loves to press from the front, and he loves to do it aggressively, which is great. But obviously he comes off, and then he just really inventive finish. There's nothing really else he could do. He just pulls off, and then he just goes for an instinctive back heel. Keeper's got no chance. Absolutely done by a lovely bit of inventive play, and it was so good to see him get his goal after I think it's the Steaua Bucharest game. Yeah, where he was unlucky to miss. I think in the early first 10 minutes, he had a cross come across goal that just missed him. And then obviously his header, which took a big deflection and went in. So it took a goal. So to finally get that is fantastic. And I think someone put up earlier, this is now his 11th consecutive game in all competitions, all levels, of scoring a goal.
Wow.
That's an incredible run that he is on at the moment. He's just an absolute...
Jamie Vardy-esque, that is.
Yeah, but to be doing that, he's 18 years old. Yes, he's been lower levels. He's been absolutely banging them in. But then to score last night as well. Yes, again, competition that we're playing against, it's 10 men. But you still have to finish the chance when you get it.
Yeah.
And, he did that with aplomb, and it was really inventive. And you have to credit him to having the confidence to go, yeah, I'm just going to try it. It's just an instinctive flick. It was just that. It's just instinctive. It's just a complete nonchalant try at goal, and it's great.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that was the moment of the night, despite the likes of maybe Bowen getting a couple goals. But yeah, I think even Mark's saying here, we have a big squad now, and we should stay up, and have a good run at Europe as well. Even Paul as well mentioning, we have enough quality players in our squad to fight on both fronts. So really, we should be looking at kind of challenging for both. There is no reason, because in the summer we invested in a lot of players, and we now have a squad that can compete. At the start of the season, it felt like we had enough to an extent, barring any injuries, to kind of fight on both fronts. And now we're in a situation where we have a pretty much injury-free squad. I'm expecting Fabianski to be back after an international break. Kufal may be close, and then that is it. We'll be fully fit. Cornet's got some more minutes. And one thing as well to mention before we kind of wrap up this review is, and get into kind of the expectation for the Conference League after the draw today, is it wasn't just Mubama's moment as well. We also saw two more youth players coming on in Levi Lang and obviously Freddie Potts in midfield. He was the one that stood out more to me just because we were defensively sound at that point. Lang did exactly what he needed to do at the back, which was nice. But Freddie Potts had a few moments that people are starting to take a little look and a little eye at what he could potentially be. And I know you tweeted it yourself, Mike. Almost looks like a mixture of Declan Rice and Michael Carrick. Now, we're not saying he's at that point, but that is pretty big praise and pretty big, the visual effect that he had on you, especially only appearing for 20 minutes of the match.
No, but I've watched him play for the under-18s and the under-23s this season as well. And he just has that aura around him. He always seems to have time, always seems to have space. He's happy to get his foot in. So, from the defensive side, the way his movement, his gait, I know they said this in commentary, but again, it's right. His general physique is very similar to Rice. He obviously hasn't physically developed like Rice yet, but again, he's only 18. And the way he kind of moves is very similar. The way he kind of tackles is one brilliant interception where he just kind of sticks his foot out in the middle of the pitch and just wins the ball in the 50-50. He makes those simple passes look as simple as they are. Some players don't make simple passes look that way. And that's something that I always remember with Carrick is that always had time. Even when he first come through, he would always be able to kind of absorb pressure and pass the ball. I do think obviously there's loads of development that needs to come from him, but he has something about the way he kind of moves around the pitch, the way that he seems confident in possession. He looks like he could be the Potts that actually manages to stay in the team.
Yeah.
Whether he replicates his dad in terms of appearances, that's another thing, because that was quite a big feat as well. But it's encouraging to see two young players who come on who were willing to go out and try and express themselves and just actually play naturally.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know the competition isn't that great that we play against, but again, it's a big thing coming on in a game. In a European kind of tie. So, you have to praise the lads. And I've seen Potts play a few times, and I even said that comparison probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, watching him in a few games. It was just, I do think that he's that type of player that we need to take time to develop. And why I sometimes say that I don't necessarily see the need to go and buy some players, because I would rather see them developed at West Ham, because we can't always rely on the loan system. And we've seen in the past, our loan system for us hasn't been great. And Rice has to be used sometimes as the beacon of, look what you can do if you take the time and invest the time to develop a talent internally. Not all are going to flourish, but some will. Like Ben Johnson. I know a lot of people have a problem with Johnson, but he's still a very solid rotational player at this point. Could be a first team player given the right, tools and development kind of plans and so on, and then the opportunities to develop. But sometimes you just need to develop players, and a key piece, again, with any European qualification, you have to have 4 players from your youth team as part of your registration. You have to have 8 homegrown players. So unless we're willing to go out and spend money in the homegrown market, which is very expensive, we have to look internally a lot more, and we have to be a lot smarter about that. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we're potentially losing one of those homegrown players and youth players in the summer. So again, we have to start addressing maybe the lack of players coming through and take a chance on, a few of these lads to bring them through and see what comes, because there's every chance they could save us millions of pounds if they're given a chance to prove it. And even as a squad player, that is still saving us millions of pounds, even as a squad player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Mark mentioned it, our youth does look promising, and they've been doing really well this season. And it's, nice to see them getting a look when the moment arises. And granted, it is a big deal, the round of 16 of a European competition, regardless of the situation it was in, to get even 20, 30 minutes, especially in front of a crowd of even 40,000 West Ham fans, would mean a lot to them. And there would be that kind of internal pressure trying to impress or trying not to make a mistake. And I thought they all played their part very well yesterday and showed a little bit about themselves, and that was the main thing. So, yeah, I think overall really happy with how the night went. Very controlled. Obviously, the red card helped things for the second half, but 4-0, 6-0 in aggregate, 2 clean sheets. 10 wins or 11 wins from 11 now in Europe in the Conference League. So we are flying and we are doing really well. And that kind of leads us into the end segment here, which is the draw, which happened today. Now, when you kind of looked at this draw, Mike, were you happy? Because I was very happy because we got, obviously got drawn against Ghent. Last year it was Genk in the Europa League, and we managed to beat them at home and draw away, I think, as well, 2-2. This year it's Ghent, who are slightly below Genk in the league, I think, at the moment. I think they're 3rd or 4th in their division. So again, it's a game that we should be winning, and we got the away leg first, which obviously plays into our hands being at home in the second leg. And then in the semi-final, it's Anderlecht, who we've already been beaten twice in our group, or AZ Alkmaar, which is a bit of an unknown entity. But I would say, again, a very winnable game. And, I think they're sitting 3rd as well in their division, below Ajax and Feyenoord. So that will be a bit of a tougher game. But right now, focusing just on the quarterfinal, Ghent in the fixture, are you happy with it? And again, is there such a big chance now to get to back-to-back semi-finals of a European competition?
Yeah. I don't think any West Ham fan's going to look at that and think, oh no, I wish we had another team. Again, as we said with Larnaca, you can't pay them any disrespect. You can't assume it's going to be a walkover. You have to turn up and play.
Yeah.
If we play to our potential, which we haven't seen throughout the season, throughout just the season in general, then we could be in trouble if we don't actually turn up with the prerequisite attitude and the correct mindset, because they'll be up for it. They'll want to make the point. I think what is great for us is the fact that the second leg is at home.
Yeah,
as we saw with the Sevilla game, it was meant the moment that game kicked off, the crowd were up for it because the crowd knew the problem. So the kind of being against adversity also almost brought the best out of both the fans and the players. So if we turn out to be in that position, it's a great place to be. And again, the size of the pitch and so on, and potentially the atmosphere could play into our hands in a return leg if we need to get a result. I think it's Orban, the Nigerian player for them. He is in sensational goal scoring form. He's lightning quick. He will be a player we'll need to keep an eye on. But then again, these are types of players that we've dealt with throughout our time in the Premier League. This is going to be the first probably bit of quality we've had to face in the competition. So we can't go in, again, expecting to win.
I think now it's the quarterfinal. The players will kind of realise we're close now. We can do this with the semi-final draw as well. Knowing who you're going to play, they should be pretty switched on. And the approach that we saw in the first leg of the round of 16, where it was kind of very lackluster, don't think we'll see that now from this point forwards.
Yeah, I think we'll see more of the pace that we saw in the second leg against Larnaca, where we actually essentially played them with the respect they deserved and actually went probably out in second and third gear throughout the game, as opposed to barely out of first in the first leg. I think playing against again, it will be a good game. They're definitely going to give us more of a test. I think they're currently sitting 5th in their they're sitting 5th in their league. Just having a quick look at it. So they're having a decent season. They'll be confident. They'll know they're the underdogs. So they know they don't. There's not going to be expectation on them to win. So they're probably going to try and hit us on the break, try and kind of sucker punch us as well. But we have to be ready for that. We have to completely play up. But when you start to then name the talents that we have, especially in the attack, you then start to go, there's no reason for us to be afraid of anyone in this competition.
Yeah.
You get through this game, which, hopefully we will do. I think we should, but don't want to count our chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah.
The next round is going to be interesting because, as you say, Anderlecht, we know we've beaten twice already. We're familiar with them, and there's no reason why, again, we shouldn't be able to beat them. Again, I think they've also had a bit of a change in January with players and also management. So they have improved a bit since we've last played them, and they've changed their style. But again, we know the quality of their players. They do have some decent players, but we should be able to once again to step up. And we didn't necessarily play them with our full first team again, so we should be able to step up against those guys, and we should be able to beat them. Is it Alkmaar? Be an interesting one because they play some really good football.
Yeah,
obviously knocked out Lazio. I believe it was Lazio.
Yep.
So they are absolutely no mugs. The Dutch league, as much as people take the mick out of it, always produces and always has some very good technical players. So again, we're going to be playing against technicians. They're going to be quick. They're going to be mobile, especially their kind of front kind of three, I believe. Carlson is one of them. Player that we actually looked at previously. He's a good player, got an eye for goal, good creative player as well. So we have to be aware. And also, I think their left back, the Hungarian lad whose name has escaped me. Again, they've got quality in their team, and there's a reason why they could have let Windle go, and that's because of the left back they've got, who's only again like 18 years old. So they're full of pace, they're full of no fear because it's a young team. But we have to say that the draw has been favourable because we're not on the side of Fiorentina or Nice. So if we do go through, we have to be confident, not overly, because obviously that can lead to complacency, but we have to be confident that we have got a good route to the final.
Yeah.
And
I think how this kind of differs from last year in the Europa League is in the round of 16, we had Sevilla, and no West Ham fan really kind of expected us to go through. It was kind of more of a hope. And, we lost the first leg 1-0, and it's like, okay, they're going to come to our stadium. We're still in with a chance. Right now, because we're favourites, we have to expect to get through these matches, and we should have enough quality to get through them. I think that's the difference, and that's where I'm slightly more worried, because we have to change our mentality from last year in terms of we can't just, expect to try and hold on against, say, a Lyon and try and, hit them on the counter-attack or something like that. We need to show a level of control like we did last night in both ties. And again, having 2 legs is going to help us massively, especially against teams like this, because say Ghent beat us 1-0 in the first leg away. We then come back to our stadium, and I'd still believe and expect us to go through it from that situation. So I think that's the slight difference from last year's competition. And as you mentioned, we've avoided Nice and Fiorentina, who were 2 of the other favourites, and obviously AZ Alkmaar as well after they beat Lazio. So it's going to be a challenge still, just because we've still got Premier League matches, and there's still going to be a lot of games to play. We need to keep players fit and rotated, and as the further we go, I think Moyes will be less reluctant to change players again. So we may see a bit more fatigue if we continue to do that. But I'm hoping in April, within our next few games in the Premier League, being Southampton, Newcastle, Fulham, this is the time now to kind of separate ourselves from the bottom 3. If we can do that, we then go into mid-April before we even start the European quarterfinal in a much better position. And maybe we can have a fresh pair of eyes on it and think, okay, we can take this a little bit more seriously than maybe some fans wanted to. But overall, I'd say we're pretty happy with the tie. And, we've still got 11, 12 games left in the Premier League. So plenty of football to play when we're back from the international break. We've got a couple of weeks off now, Mike, so we can just chill. Nothing coming on the channel. Obviously, that's a joke. We will keep stuff coming. And I think we'll just do a bit of analysis maybe on Ghent. Maybe if people want to see that, if you guys want to kind of learn how they play and what kind of dangers they possess, we can do a breakdown on their side before that European match as well. So, let us know. Thank you for joining us for this preview. Again, nice 4-0 win. 2 4-0 wins in the space of a few weeks, which is nice. Also a 4-0 loss, but we won't mention that. And Mike, any final thoughts for this game last night and kind of your hopes for the Conference League?
No, I think just last night was a thoroughly professional, sensible performance from us. And good to see players who needed some time for fitness got that. We got through unscathed, no injuries. Again, that's a positive and a plus. With regards to the draw, it's favourable, but just because it is favourable doesn't mean that we are already got our planes booked. We're already in Prague.
I bet some people have done that already.
I know. We are still 4 games away from getting there. So we have to take the competition seriously. We have to play like it is the likes of Sevilla, Lyon, Frankfurt, although against Frankfurt, I think we bottled it and played within ourselves. But we have to play as though we are playing the bigger teams. We have to get ourselves in this mindset that we're now playing quality in this competition, because we haven't really played it until essentially the next round. So yeah, hopefully we'll get at least 4 points in the next 3 games. Ideally, we need 6 to 9 points. Ideally, we actually need 9 points to start ourselves putting clear.
Yeah.
It is so tight down there. Obviously, it's only 3 points between us and 12th.
We've got Forest playing right now as well, about to kick off against Newcastle, so that's one to keep an eye on as well.
So again, if we can at least get 6 points in the next few games, then we can maybe start to create a bit of distance between us and the bottom. That can relieve a bit of pressure, means we can go for maybe one of the legs, maybe we play a rotated team, and another leg we then go for the stronger, almost first team. If we are able to do that kind of approach and concentrate on the Premier League, I think that's the way to go. But we have to win our bread and butter, which is the Premier League. But on the flip side, I don't think there's going to be ever a better time for West Ham to win a piece of silverware.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the main thing. We're going to reiterate the Premier League is the priority, but we have a big enough squad and a good enough squad to go far in this European competition as well. And we're very close now. We're at the quarterfinals. So as you mentioned, 4 games away, but only 4 games away from a European final, which would be just fantastic to see us in that competition. And, hopefully that European final is after the conclusion of the Premier League as well. So hopefully we'll be safe and then we can go into that, into that final. Again, hopeful thinking, but go into that final with a bit more of a smile on our face and maybe a bit more hope going into next season as well. So yeah, that's where we're going to leave it today, guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Friday evenings and your weekends. We'll be back soon with some more content on the channel. We try to post daily. So again, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like on the video as always, as it's much appreciated. And Mike, one thing left to say.
Come on, you Lions.